Welcome to SB&M is Here, the State Bar of New Mexico's official podcast. In this series, we'll discuss topics such as professional development, tools of the legal trade, and mental and professional well-being. Connecting the legal community across New Mexico, SB&M is here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 3 of SB&M is Here. This is Morgan Pettit, Member Services Manager and Podcast Producer. As always, I'm excited for today's episode. With such a wide range of membership from practice areas, areas of interest, and geographical location, it's always hard to hit the listening interests of everybody. And we try to have topics that are general to some that get down to the real nitty gritty. And today's episode that is brought to you by the Indian Law section of the State Bar does just that and gets down to the nitty gritty. This episode will focus on home loans on Indian trust lands. Our speakers today will go over what Indian trust lands are, the particulars of tribal members owning land, what legal infrastructure is needed for home loans, and what native CDFIs are and their importance. I am very grateful to the Indian Law section for helping to coordinate this episode. It was also really great to work with Denise and Sheila, and I think they did a great job explaining this crucial aspect of our state's tribal nations. With that, Denise and Sheila, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Morgan. Good morning, I'm Denise Zuni.
Good morning, I'm Sheila Herrera, and our podcast today is on home loans in Indian country. Let's get started with who we are and what we do.
I'm Denise Zuni. I'm an Indian housing attorney. I represent Indian tribes in community and housing development. I also represent Native community development financial institutions. I know it's a long word, but it means CDFIs for short, and they are small nonprofit lenders who lend in Indian country.
Hello again, I'm Sheila Herrera, and I'm with Tiwa Lending Services. We are a Native CDFI. We provide home loans to Isleta tribal members who reside in Taos Pueblo. Today, we're going to be having a conversation about home loans on Indian trust lands. We're also going to talk about the work of Native CDFIs in lending in Indian country. So let's get started. Denise, let's start with the basic question of what are Indian trust lands?
Indian trust lands, question of the day. Well, Indian trust lands are held in trust by the federal government for the benefit of a particular Indian tribe. Because of this, tribes don't hold the legal title to their lands. The legal title is held by the US government. The federal agency held with the trust responsibility over Indian lands is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or as we know them, BIA for short. In New Mexico, there are 23 Indian tribes. There's the 19 Pueblos, the Mescalero and Hickory Apache tribes, and the Navajo Nation. The majority of all tribes in New Mexico of their lands are in trust status. Because their lands are in trust status, tribal members of Indian tribes don't own land the same way that land is owned outside Indian country.
Interesting. First of all, Denise, what do you mean by Indian country?
For our purposes, I mean Indian reservations that are on trust lands, where tribal members don't hold their lands in fee like people outside Indian reservations do.
So do tribal members own land?
Tribal members get land assignments from their tribe. A land assignment is an indefinite possession of the land. Each tribe has its own process for giving land assignments. Each tribe is different. In some tribes, you can't sell your land assignment. In others, like Taos Pueblo, where I'm from, land assignments are freely alienable, meaning they're transferable among tribal members. So a tribal member can transfer his or her land assignment to another tribal member by sale, inheritance, will, and they can even use it for collateral to borrow money from a tribal entity or native CDFI that's willing to collateralize their land assignment.
So do home loans occur through the land assignment process?
No, the home loan happens through a lease, much like commercial leasing. A tribal member obtains a residential lease from his or her tribe, and then they mortgage the lease to a lender to obtain a home loan to build a home, to rehabilitate a home, or buy a home. The mortgage is called a leasehold mortgage.
Denise, are there lenders willing to lend through this process?
Yes, lenders have been lending in Indian country using this process since the late 1990s, especially federal lenders like the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, through their Section 184 Indian Loan Program, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Veterans Affairs through their Native Direct Loan Program, and now Native CDFIs.
Do you know, Denise, are lenders comfortable with lending in Indian country?
Yes. In the late 1990s, HUD, USDA, and the VA came together and they drafted model documents to give lenders, including federal lenders, comfort in lending in Indian country. So basically what the federal lender said is if a tribe agrees to adopt mortgage, recording, foreclosure, and eviction laws, or the laws of a state to make lending possible, we're willing to lend in Indian country. So tribes that want to make lending happen on their lands need to create the necessary legal infrastructure and give lenders assurances that the legal infrastructure will stay in place and that they will allow lenders onto their lands to serve as a home loan, and if necessary, to foreclose and evict a defaulting borrower.
Denise, so what's the necessary legal infrastructure that a tribe has to have in place to make home loans possible on their lands?
A tribe has to do the following. First, as I stated earlier, they have to have a mortgage law. That mortgage law has to provide for making the home mortgage a first priority lien, a recording system to record leases and mortgages, and a foreclosure and eviction law in the event of default. Alternatively, as I stated earlier, a tribe could decide that they're just going to adopt a state's mortgage, recording, foreclosure, and eviction law. All tribes in New Mexico that are doing mortgage lending have adopted their own mortgaging, recording, foreclosure, and eviction laws. Excuse me, I'm talking too fast, I think.
I know you're doing good.
The second thing that a tribe has to do is they have to adopt a standard residential lease that they will use for mortgage lending. 3, they have to agree to allow lenders and their federal partners onto Indian lands for the purpose of serving a loan and inspecting the mortgage property. And then finally, they have to agree that they're going to apply their land, or rather their laws, to govern mortgages, not rescind their laws, and allow lenders to file for foreclosure in tribal court. Recently, however, HUD has been requiring tribes to agree to allow a lender to sue for foreclosure in federal court. Most New Mexico tribes have the necessary legal infrastructure in place to do mortgage lending.
What is BIA's role in the mortgage lending process?
As the trustee of the lands, BIA has to 1, approve the residential lease, 2, record the lease and record the mortgage, 3, provide title status reports similar to what title companies do outside Indian country.
Yes, I'm familiar with title companies providing title commitments. They're also known as binders. So on trust lands, TSRs, I guess they're called title status reports. They take the place of what title companies do.
Yes, You're right. And then the last thing that BIA does is they approve a mortgage depending on the tribe's law. BIA has regulations that govern the approving and recording of leases and mortgages. These regulations, for those attorneys listening out there, are found at 25 CFR Part 162. Every tribe has an assigned BIA agency office that they work with.
I know from experience that this process takes some time. It can take BIA 6 months or longer to complete the environmental reviews, the title status reports, and or record a mortgage.
Yes, you're right. And in an effort to shorten the time it takes to close a loan, in 2012, Congress adopted the Helping Expedite and Advance Responsible Tribal Home Ownership Act, or HARF as it's known. And this law allowed tribes to adopt their own leasing laws and forego the BIA lease and mortgage approval process. Not having leases or mortgages approved by BIA saves months, vital in closing a loan. However, leases and mortgages still have to be recorded at BIA's Land Titles and Records Office.
So Denise, what happens if there's a default? Does the tribe risk losing its lands?
A tribe never risks losing its lands. Remember, these are lands in trust. Ownership of the lands can never leave the tribe or the US government. If there's a default, and as you know, as a lender, there are some, a lender will simply work with the defaulting borrower to either cure the default, similar to what happens outside Indian country, or have a family member assume the loan, or have the tribe or the tribe's tribally designated housing entity, or TDHEs as they are known for short, assume the loan. A tribe or its TDHE always gets the right of first refusal, and that simply means they get the first opportunity to assume a loan. And as a last resort, a lender can foreclose on the loan and sell the home to another qualified tribal member.
For example, we had a default in a SLETA. Tiwa Lending Services met with the borrower. We discussed options on what we could do to have a family member assume the loan. We also discussed that a family member would have to attend our financial literacy classes, and we had to make sure that they were qualified for the home and were ready to become a home buyer. With our financial education classes, it's a proven fact that this process works. We've worked with one default where a family member took over a defaulting loan, and we are currently working with another family in identifying a family member to take over the loan.
Right. So let's just summarize. A tribe that wants its tribal members to obtain home loans on their lands have to be willing to create the necessary legal infrastructure. They have to give assurances to lenders that they're not going to rescind their mortgage laws. They have to give assurances that they have judicial systems that will enforce its mortgage, foreclosure, and eviction laws. And importantly, they have to allow lenders reasonable access to its lands to service the loans and do reasonable inspections. A tribe that doesn't enforce its laws, for example, never risks losing the land. In a worst case scenario, a tribe risks that a lender will stop lending on that tribe's land. So let's talk about native CDFIs, Sheila. I'm so excited about them and the fact that there are some native CDFIs in Indian country. So tell us, what are they and what do they do?
Well, Denise, a native CDFIs, they were created under the U.S. Department of Treasury for the purpose of, promoting lending in underserved communities like Indian reservations. Native CDFIs like TLS, also known as Tiwa Lending Services, get their funding from the Department of Treasury under its Native American CDFI program. There are 3 Native CDFIs in New Mexico, Native Community Capital, and they're in Laguna, Pueblo. We have a Native Partnership for Housing in Gallup, and of course, Tiwa Lending Services, who until recently just operated on the Pueblo of Isleta. All 3 Native CDFIs provide home loans on tribal trust lands.
So tell us about Tiwa Lending Services. What do they do?
Our underlying purpose is to promote homeownership and bring financial empowerment services to the Isleta Pueblo and Native Americans surrounding Isleta Pueblo, where many Isleta tribal members and other Native Americans reside. These are underserved communities. So, for example, we provide home loans on the Pueblo of Isleta on trust lands. A tribal member obtains a residential lease from his or her tribe and mortgages the lease, which is called a leasehold mortgage, to build or rehab a home. As more homes are built, it creates a market for homes. In Isleta Pueblo, we are starting to see a market of home sales. Tiwa Lending Services also provides homeownership, financial education classes to ensure tribal homeowners are successful. We have these classes once a year, and because of these financial education classes that we provide, our portfolio, which we're happy to say of $8 million, has a 0% foreclosure. We currently have 84 home loans, and all of them are less than 30 days delinquent. We provide development services like credit counseling, youth financial education. Our consumer loan products consist of small micro business loans, credit repair, credit building, personal loans, debt consolidation, home repair, and down payment assistance. But those are topics for another time.
I heard you expanded outside Isleta Pueblo.
Yes, we are so excited. We'll be providing homes to Native Americans in Valencia and Bernalillo counties. That was part of our mission since 2009. We are in the process of revising our policies and loan documents and obtaining all the necessary licenses to make this happen. Our goal is to begin offering these loans before the end of this year. These loans will follow the New Mexico mortgage and recording laws, since they won't be on tribal trust lands.
And Sheila, when you say you'll be providing homes, you mean home loans, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, awesome. So where should Native Americans go if they are interested in obtaining a home loan on their res?
They can go to a lender, a bank, or a Native CDFI, or to their Tribal Housing Authority office, who will direct them to a lender, including USDA. If they are a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, they can contact the VA Native American Direct Home Loan Program at nadl@va.gov.
I know that there are lenders in the area that lend on trust lands, and they include Bank of Albuquerque and First Tribal Lending. Their contact information can be obtained by Googling them. Lenders that lend in Indian country also have a working relationship with the tribes whose lands that they're lending in.
But Denise, many tribes need help in setting up a one-stop shop where the tribal members can go to get assistance in applying for a loan. Some tribes don't have a place that the tribal members can go to begin the home loan process. This is a challenge. Also, some tribes like Pueblo of Isleta have a lengthy home site development process. So to address this challenge, Tiwa Lending Services developed a chart of the home site development process to guide tribal members in obtaining a home loan on the Pueblo of Isleta Indian Reservation.
So that seems to be one challenge, but what are others?
Some tribes need assistance in setting up their legal infrastructures. For others, even those tribes that have all the necessary legal infrastructure, they don't always know what the leasing and mortgaging process involves. They need assistance with setting up their processes. For example, some tribes need help with their environmental review process or simply just understanding the steps required to get a lease and a mortgage.
I also think that we need more attorneys educated on this process so they can assist lenders or tribes that they represent. And importantly, so they can educate their tribal clients on setting up their leasing and mortgaging processes. If we can educate attorneys on leasehold mortgaging, they can in turn educate their tribal clients, or perhaps even get into this rewarding line of work. I think it's one of the most rewarding experiences to see first-time homeowners in a home that you created the laws and processes for.
To conclude, we want to leave our contact information for anyone interested in learning more about leasehold mortgaging on tribal trust lands. You can contact Denise Zuni at live.com, and Sheila Herrera. My email address is Sheila, SHEILA, at Tiwa, TIWA, lending.org.
So let me just correct my email address. My email address, this is Denise Zuni at DZUNI@live.com. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and found it informative.
Thank you so much for listening in. Feel free to contact Tiwa Lending Services at our email address or at 505-916-0556 if you're interested in finding out more about the lending process. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Member Services Department at Indian Law Section. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Kevin McLeod at Incomtech. The views of the presenters are that of their own and not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. Nothing said in this podcast is legal advice for you.